Ramsha talks about her move from Pakistan, the realities of being truly independent, the price she's had to pay as a successful journalist who followed her heart, and how Break the Bias is relevant to her life. The first month out of Karachi in a foreign city. How did it feel? How long did it take to sink in?
When I moved from Karachi in September 2020, the first month it felt like a vacation, to be honest, and it also felt very unreal. Um, yeah, I couldn't process that this had happened. I had managed to get out. Also, because for me, it took months and months of convincing, processing, balance, just measuring pros and cons, and also, yeah, trying to communicate why this matters to me, why this is good for me. And it's interesting that even though I moved on a scholarship, I still had to convince. Of course, there are concerns in our families, and they are valid concerns, absolutely, for your safety, how you will manage on your own, because women don't live alone. You've never lived alone unless you're married. So for a single woman, a young woman to live on your own is such an alien, scary concept. So it takes a lot of convincing. So yeah, that happened. And then when I moved for the first month, I felt like, okay, I felt scared. I was very overwhelmed. I was scared. I was less confident. I remember that because we're so not used to, for instance, walking outside at night. For me, the idea of night was still scary. You know, even then, even when I'm abroad, I'm in Denmark, I'm in a safe country, I still was reluctant to go out on my own, but then I was also excited to try it. So it was very overwhelming and a combination of mixed feelings. Also, I think yes, no matter how old you are, when you move out first time on your own, and when independence, real independence hits you, there are a lot of things that you come into contact with you which you never even thought of before. Cooking was one. Yeah, I was making a tone that I'm going to go for something very serious, but no, cooking was one. I was not really into cooking before. So I had to do grocery shopping now. I had to manage bills. I had to cook. And these are concepts which are very basic in the West, in Europe. Like people way, way younger than me have been doing this for way longer than I was doing at 27 or 26. So this to communicate that to them that oh this is my first time cooking on my own or I'm doing groceries on my own was something like what, you're that old and you don't know how to do that. And then I remember calling home, sending voice notes for recipes all the time, and that's when I started to feel the pressure also, like okay, I have so much to do in a day, and wow, I'm truly independent. So the first month was basically, yeah, coming to witnessing this new reality of mine, processing these new responsibilities, also excitement. Again, like I said, that I've managed to get out, but it's also scary at the start. And it's also convincing yourself, firstly, that this is the right decision. And now that you stood your ground and you convinced everybody this is for good, there's no going back. So, no matter how difficult it is, you cannot admit this to anyone back home. You keep it to yourself. So this is your responsibility, and now you don't get to complain at all.
Women in Pakistan are generally expected to abide by certain rules. We aren't expected to chase our passions. You, on the other hand, are an experienced journalist. How did you find your passion?
I think it's important to consider what passion is, firstly. So for us, passion would be obviously to work, to be able to have a career, or even to do what we want to do. That could be getting married, that could be settling in. It doesn't always have to be working. But passion for the society and culturally is gender roles. So, gender roles is that you are expected to have a home by a certain age. You are expected to be married by a certain age. You are expected to have a child by a certain age, and so on and so forth. So, I think there's a difference of perception when it comes to what passion is, and which is why it's so difficult, because I see for our age groups and for the younger age groups, it's now we're contesting that idea of passion. We are contesting that passion can be freedom to choose. And this is what modern feminism is about, or feminism has always been about. But because in our society, it's so normal to just have one gender or those specific ideas of gender roles, it's just something strange when I talk to my friends here about the challenges women face in Pakistan, because they're like, isn't this obvious? Like, why is it so difficult to pursue a master's abroad for a girl? Why is it so difficult to even ask or set this condition before a marriage that you want to work after marriage? Like, isn't this a basic right? And I think this is a big difference that in our society, we are now approaching these questions. We are now challenging passion, and something that wasn't done as much before. Um, our also our age group is much more aware, and this applies for both men and women. Men are also asking these questions. Men also want ambitious, I mean, comparatively. But yeah, they also want more from a woman, not just from a partner, not just, a traditional homemaker. But even if they do, that's the whole point, that the freedom to choose for a man and a woman. Whatever you want, we shouldn't have judgment around it, and we should be able to freely choose.
There's a price we pay when we chase our dreams. What price have you paid?
This is often said in our context that there is a price you pay if you follow your dreams. And this is also something that ideally, in an ideal world, I would want to change the framing of this. Why do we have to compromise? Why do we have to sacrifice to pursue a basic right? Ideally, this shouldn't happen. But in our context, of course, it's very valid, because you just to want to drive at night, just to do a night shift, just to, yeah, continue studying at 28, just to resist marriage because you're not ready, or resist having a child because you're not ready. You have to go through a tremendous process. It's unrelenting. You have to, yeah, it's a process. It's tiring, it's exhausting, but it's a process, and that's the price you have to pay. So for me, I think I'm in a better position now because I managed to get out, in the sense that I am able to pursue my master's, and I'm very grateful. But then at the same time, now I have a new process coming up. Now the process is trying to convince why want a life abroad, or I want a life back there, that I want to be able to make this choice where I want to stay and why I want to stay. And of course, the expectation is that your partner should decide that. You should move where your partner is. And this should be my top priority right now, not job hunting or accommodation apartment hunting. And the price, I think, is you it's just, yeah, this communication gap, that you're never able to truly admit who you are, what you are, and you're sort of something my friends say here, you're kind of living a double life. So you have two roles. One role is what you are in Pakistan, and one role is here, and the two lives are hardly intersecting. It's just, it's so different. And it's amazing how we're able to do this and how naturally it comes to us. But it's not about lying or something, it's just different priorities, different concerns, different futures we're planning at this simultaneously. So I think the price is this gap. And then one day when those two realities do collide, how does that go? I'm still to find out, but I think it's this is why it's even more important with our generation, this huge communication gap and difference of expectations, that we as individuals always feel misunderstood. And being misunderstood is a price that I feel is very common among our generation and also the younger one. Like, we're constantly complaining, not complaining, but yeah, voicing that we're misunderstood, or that we want things differently. And this is a movement in itself, and it's not, and it's important. This is who we are, but we're also made somehow we are asked kind of, yeah, we're made, you kind of sort of feel guilty about feeling this way, even though you feel it's right, you feel guilty wanting these things. So I think my price is the constant guilt, and I'm always in doubt if what I'm doing is right, even though I feel is right, but I never feel very 100% confident about it because I'm always being questioned, and I always have to convince others that even though I am an established journalist, even though I am doing a master's abroad, on a scholarship, or even if I have certain opportunities, I still have to convince that this is important or this is valuable.
This year's theme for International Women's Day is Break the Bias. Can you quote an example from your life where you were a victim of bias and how that impacted you?
In terms of breaking the bias, I mean, I think as women we have a lot of examples, but I think the biggest one was working a night shift. So I was working till late midnight in dawn in Pakistan, for almost 5 years. And throughout that period, even though I would consider myself successful because I think I did very good journalism and also gratefully, luckily, also, yes, got recognition for it. But despite that, every time when I would talk to people, or yeah, they see aunties, or basically, yes, generally society, this would come up. Oh, you work the night shift. What? You come home around midnight? Akeli larki? You know, somehow this was always the focus of conversation whenever they talked about my job, and never about how fruitful, impactful it has been. So this still, and also with rishtas, like no one wanted to marry a girl who works late night. So I think, and the yeah, associations कि रात की जॉब तो कॉल सेंटर्स में होती है सिर्फ. So yeah, I think this is my example for break the bias.